Great RTS games already have a habit of taking over your brain. You start with a few skirmishes and suddenly you're learning build orders, arguing about faction balance, installing community maps, and wondering why it's 1:30 in the morning and your economy looks like it was planned by a raccoon. And then if you take the right mod scene, these great RTS games can become something even bigger and timeless. New factions, better AI, huge campaigns, total conversions, quality of life upgrades. And these things breathe life into community ecosystems that keep games alive for years, even decades after initial release. So today we're looking at 10 RTS games where the base game is already worth your time, but the mods take things even further. Welcome to LT Gaming, my name is Tom, we're two brothers who are gaming obsessed, and today I'm going to walk through what each mod scene brings to the table and then shout out a few personal favourites to get you started. If you like strategy games with some proper depth, brilliant community projects, and just a whole boatload of fun, jump aboard, give the video a like, subscribe if you like this sort of content, and then check out the RTS playlist below for more. First up, we have to talk about Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War. Let's be real, the base game is doing a huge amount of heavy lifting here. Dawn of War just understands 40k. Fast squad-based combat, brutal faction flavour, territory control that keeps you moving, and every unit feels like it has a unique identity. But the mod scene is where it does get properly ridiculous. Over the years, modders have added new factions, extra units, bigger armies, improved AI, campaigns, higher tech tiers, and the sort of late game battles you fully expect from the Grim Dark. A big shout out from me is the Unification mod. It pulls together a huge amount of community work into one massive package, adding loads of races, units and variety, and it really makes Dawn of War feel like a wider slice of the 40k universe. I want to give credit to the Definitive Edition team here as well, because they made a big effort to keep things mod friendly and compatible, and that matters because this is an older game, so it would have been very easy to lose years of community momentum overnight. Instead, a lot of these huge projects have a bright future. Beyond the Unification mod, there is Ultimate Apocalypse if you want Dawn of War pushed to full scale insanity, massive units, super weapons and battles that just become unhinged. Titanium Wars leans into bigger armies and Titan tier warfare, and 3rd Generation, haven't played it in a while, but it adds a lot more races, improved AI and campaign support. The Crucible mod is also very well regarded, but I have never played this one. So Dawn of War earns its place because the mods don't rescue it, the game was already great, they just take a glorious foundation and turn it into an enormous community toy box. Next up is Command & Conquer Generals 0 Hour. Now to be very clear, I think you can make a strong case for almost any Command & Conquer game on a list like this. This series has one of those modding communities that refuses to sit quietly in the corner. Tiberian Sun, Red Alert series, Tiberian Wars, they all have brilliant community projects worth checking out. But for this list, I've cherry-picked 0 Hour because its mod scene is such a good starting point. The base game is already a classic CNC game, fast base building, chunky armies, clear faction identities, and a pretty vibrant multiplayer scene still to this day. And the mods just build beautifully on top of that. Rise of the Reds is my favourite here, adding new factions, reworking existing ones, and turning 0 Hour into something that feels much broader without losing the core pace. Shockwave is another fantastic shout if you want something that expands the game with new units, generals, upgrades, and tactical options, while still feeling like 0 Hour. And then there's Contra, which takes things in a bigger, more extreme direction, with new tech, new powers, tougher battles, and a much more explosive sense of escalation. Honestly, as a jump off point, you can't really go wrong with those three, but there's a whole bunch you could dive into, so check them out. The Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2 Rise of the Witch King is a bit of a forgotten RTS giant, and this one feels like a miracle because the base game had such a strong identity, fortress building, heroes units, sweeping fantasy battles, and the mod scene has kept this one properly alive. I believe the game is now abandonware. The two big ones I'm going to shout out here are Age of the Ring and Edain. Age of the Ring is probably the one you want to try if you need something that feels like a lavish community-made continuation. It brings stunning visual updates, more film-accurate assets, bespoke campaigns, scripted missions, and custom captain heroes. It's one of those mods where you can really tell the people making it care about the universe they're working in. Edame though is especially interesting from a strategy point of view. It restores a lot of the feeling of the first Battle for Middle-earth, with multiplayer maps, a more defensive castle system, and fixed building plots. That alone gives the game quite a different rhythm, where holding strongholds and planning your base feels more in tune with the fantasy of Middle-earth. It also throws in new factions, new sub-factions, loads of new heroes, unique ring heroes for each faction, and even a revamped custom hero editor. So Battle for Middle-earth 2 earns its place because the mods haven't just added more stuff, they've preserved one of the best fantasy RTS games ever made. Okay, up next, Supreme Commander Forged Alliance, and this is one of the best RTS games where the base game feels absurdly ambitious even now today. Huge maps, massive armies, strategic zoom, experimental units, everything you could want. Forged Alliance is already one of the great large-scale RTS games, granted, but Forged Alliance Forever, or FAF, is what has kept it thriving. And this mod isn't just a mod in the usual sense, it's more like an entire community ecosystem built around the game. It gives Forged Alliance a custom client, matchmaking, multiplayer lobbies, balance updates, performance improvements, co-op options, community maps, AI support, and more, and it's an easier route to playing the game properly on modern machines. And that's because Supreme Commander is not a small game, it's an RTS game built around scale, and FAF helps scale that function still today, rather than leaving players to wrestle with the old systems and half-dead multiplayer. There are content mods and extra community projects around it too, but this is the essential starting point. It keeps the core game sharp, playable and active. I gotta say, it's absolutely phenomenal. Pick it up. Moving on to Age of Empires 3, and yes, I know Age of Empires 2 could easily have taken this spot as well. The game has an enormous modding history, a ridiculous amount of custom content, but I don't feel I need to put a spotlight on that one. I wanted to put the light on Age of Empires 3 here because it is often the slightly overlooked entry in this series, and the mod scene has a lot more going on than people realise. The base game has a very distinct identity, the home city system, shipments, asymmetrical civilizations, all the things you'd expect from an Age of Empires game. And the mods really lean into this. The big one I like to point people towards is Wars of Liberty. This is a massive overhaul that expands the game with a huge amount of new content, new civs, units, techs and maps, and it takes the already distinctive framework of Age of Empires 3 and pushes it into a more grand, chaotic sandbox direction. What I like about it is not just making the game bigger, it highlights what made Age of Empires 3 interesting in the first place. It wasn't trying to be Age of Empires 2 with muskets, it had its own rhythm, its own ideas, and its own weird little strategic flavour. So Age of Empires 3 earns its place because it has a vibrant mod scene in an already underrated RTS game. Next up is Warcraft 3, and this is probably one of the most important modding scenes in RTS history. Warcraft 3 didn't just get a few custom maps, balance tweaks, it became a whole creative platform that spawned a whole new generation of games. Now, I'm going to keep this focused on Warcraft 3 itself rather than go towards the Dota angle, but I do want to shout out Chronicles of the Second War as a personal favourite. Now, I adored Warcraft 2, one of my formative RTS games, and this is the kind of project which makes me happy mods exist. It's a total conversion that recreates the Second War era with remade campaigns, new models, custom voice acting, and a lot of care for the original lore. And I mean, I'm just scratching the surface here with the mod scene. You can dive into websites like the Hive Workshop to really unpack this side of things. So Warcraft 3 earns its place because the mod scene is frankly enormous. It's fan, passion driven, historical preservation and RTS craft all rolled into one. What is not to like with this? Okay, now we've got a more modern indie pick with Rusted Warfare. This is a no-brainer for RTS fans. It's a cheap game, less than $5, lightweight, easy to run, and very clearly built by someone who understands why people still love classic real-time strategy. The base game is already good fun, big battles, very readable, skirmishes, multiplayer, sandbox options, all the good stuff. But the mod scene is where Rusted Warfare becomes properly fascinating. This game is teeming with community content. Units, maps, missions, conversions, weird experiments. I have to shout out some mods by a guy called Sushi Maki, hopefully I got that right, because he's effectively looked at all of RTS history and thought, yeah, let's put this into the game. These mods are inspired by classic RTS giants, and they're completely original projects too. He's made ones for Dawn of War, Warcraft 3, Age of Empires, and it's absolutely fantastic. So for any RTS fans, I find this very hard not to recommend. Even if you want to poke around the workshop for a few evenings, you'll probably get your money's worth before your tea has gone cold. Next up is Starcraft 2, and this is one of those entries where the word mod almost feels too small, because Starcraft's 2 custom scene is a folder full of sprawling experiments, custom campaigns, alternate modes, co-op scenarios, and things that make you wonder just how damn creative can people get with a game. The base game, of course, is still one of the greatest RTS games ever made. I don't really need to sell that to you, but the custom scene gives it a completely different life. You've got different maps that twist the game into entirely new shapes, custom campaigns for people who want more story-driven Starcraft, and projects that use the engine as a platform rather than a battlefield. A personal shout out to me is Starcraft Mass Recall, which recreates the original Starcraft and Brood War campaigns inside the Starcraft 2 engine. So for anyone who loves the classic Starcraft but wants a smoother feel and the presentation of Starcraft 2, it's a fantastic project to check out. So I can only really encourage you guys to go check out the modding scene for Starcraft 2. It really shows how flexible the engine is. One minute you're playing one of the most demanding competitive RTSs ever made, next you're in a custom campaign, you're doing tower defense, a survival mode. There's so much to unpack here. Star Wars Empire at War, and honestly if we're talking about RTS games transformed by mods, this one has to be probably the top one. The base game already had a brilliant pitch, galactic conquest, real-time space battles, ground assaults, iconic Star Wars factions, what is not to love? But the mod scene has turned Empire at War into something much bigger. The big thing to know about most of the major mods is they're built around Forces of Corruption expansion, so the Steam Gold Pack is generally the easiest way to get started. And then you've got what I would call the big three for me anyway. Thrawn's Revenge is probably the gold standard for many players. It focuses on the Legends era after Endor, with multiple splinter factions, huge ship rosters, loads to love here. It's a proper galactic strategy sandbox. Awakening of the Rebellion is the one to look at if you want a tougher, more asymmetric galactic civil war experience. It overhauls the campaign, logistics, missions, the AI and tactical battles, and it can be wonderfully brutal to play. Then there is Fall of the Republic, which shifts the whole thing into the Clone Wars era with massive canonical campaigns across the galaxy. So Empire at War is on this list because mods don't just freshen it up, they turn a 2006 Star Wars RTS into several different grand strategy sandboxes depending on which era of the galaxy you want to destroy first. Okay, so not strictly just an RTS, but I wanted to include Medieval 2 Total War because the Total War series is known for its depth and sheer wealth of mods, and one of my favourite mods to play of all time is Warcraft Total War. Built on the Kingdoms expansion, this mod takes large-scale campaigns and real-time battles of Medieval 2 and drags them straight into Azeroth, with around 20 playable factions pulled from across Warcraft lore. You got new units, new campaign maps, custom campaigns, and a massive attempt to translate the factions and flavour of Warcraft into the Total War structure, and it's just a huge amount of fun. There is a massive amount of care here as well. The factions feel designed to pay tribute to that Warcraft 3 era identity, while expanding the scale beyond what the original RTS games could show. Now, I could make a total list dedicated to the Total War series and the mods that utterly transform those games, and let's be honest, I probably will in the future, but the purpose of this list is to intro you guys to different mod scenes, and I think Warcraft Total War is a very good entry point into the Total War modding scene in general. Before we wrap up, I wanted a few honourable mentions because honestly this topic is a bit of a bottomless pit. Total War Attila has the Dawnless Days mod, which frankly is a ridiculous Lord of the Rings total conversion mod that is absolutely stellar. Shout out to Empire Earth as well, also has a brilliant community that's keeping it alive. Rise of Nations is another one worth mentioning. It's one of those strategy games that already blended so many ideas together and the mod scene gives you more reasons to revisit it. Then there's Homeworld, which has some fantastic Star Wars and Star Trek mods over the years. The slight warning here is I've had a lot of difficulty getting them to work on newer versions. But this is the whole fun of this topic really, there's too much to mention. RTS modding is enormous, messy, passionate, and always slightly more active than you would expect. If I have missed one of your favourites, let me know in the comments. I'm always on the hunt for new mods to try. And with this genre, there's always one person who knows something about some incredible total conversion that is hidden deep on the internet. Alright, that will do it for today's video. Get active in those comments, let me know, like the video, all of that jazz, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye now.